Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode with Pacific Crime Business Councils, and already this World Talent Economy Forums. I think many people from around the world, from the business organizations, uh, from governments, from universities. Many people know about Pacific Crime Business Council. Even actually, I we get many response from around the world. They want to know more about Pacific Crime Business Council, especially last episode was very interesting, so they want to know more about the corporate social responsibility and resilience. We have our president from Pacific Crime Business Council, Dr. Ali, Mr. Eric, Mr. Stan, and Mr. Mu. So welcome everyone to this World Talent Economy Forum. So I directly want to go because already know everybody know uh, about Pacific Crime Business Council. I directly want to mention one specific points that Dr. Ali, he is also president of California Miramar University, and they are doing excellent works in USA as well as in Asia Pacific. They are collaborating because education is ultimately the way of solving many things. So we will work together and we will find out the way that how we can collaborate with California Miramar University and how we can solve different kind of local problem from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Singapore to other country. So Dr. Ali, uh, I want to start from this point that at present in COVID period, there are many challenges and many things happen in economy. What do you think? What we have to understand about the corporate social responsibility in this pandemic situation?
All right, thank you. Hello, everybody, and hello, Sharif, once again. It's nice to be at your service. Let me make a couple of just minor adjustments. I used to be the president at California Miramar University. I am now the chief academic officer. And yes, Dr. Foster and I, both of us from California Miramar University, we're reaching out globally and we are partnering with other institutions that are global in nature, such as Pacific Rim Business Council, to be able to better deliver our message, and also the fact that we've learned long time ago that education is no longer about reading textbooks and doing homeworks, but it's about being able to solve real problems in the real world, especially at our doctorate level. Our DBA program is very much geared toward creating the leaders and the problem solvers of the future. So we train them in such a fashion that as soon as they hit the ground, they're ready to run, and usually they take on very realistic and hands-on issues. And as a matter of fact, you go to any of our DBA classes and you see COVID-19 is up front, right there, center, and everyone's dealing with it because that's what a DBA program should be. So hopefully that correction corrects it. And by the way, I am not the president of, I don't mind being president of this or that. But again, also when it comes to Pacific Business Council, president is Mr. Homeschooler, and I am only in charge of the strategy development. I'm more of a strategy guy into that. But thank you so much for the vote of confidence, Sharif, making me sound so great. Another issue. Now, you did ask about a very complex question of what is corporate social responsibility and how does it come to the picture in today's turbulent world. And let me say like this. As you say, uh, social responsibility is clear. Responsibility that you have to social because as any entity, human being or a corporation, you really are responsible, either you want it or not, because we are social animals and our existence is in a context of a social being. And as such, we interact with the world. So any corporation or individual in reality is interacting with the world. Yes, we have been seeing a phenomenal increase in the last 2 centuries in GDP per capita, to a point that if you bring in the number of, I mean, the increase in both GDP per capita as well as the increase in population, we're looking at the factors of 10,000 times within the last 200 years. So what that where did it come from? It doesn't come without any price. The price of such a phenomenal growth is the destruction of our environment, the ozone layer having a hole in it. We see all these climate changes and a lot of difficulties. And all you have to do is turn on the TV to see what I'm talking about. Now, the question is, are we responsible? The fact that we are plundering, the fact that we are interacting in such a negative fashion with the environment has become an issue for the since 1965. It has become a major issue, but recent years, especially after the Paris Accord, it became a major issue that we need to be responsible. Corporate social responsibility is part of a governance of an organization in which looks at performance of a corporation in response to all stakeholders, not necessarily only owners, employees, or customers, but also to the its social context as a whole, namely the nation, the city, the environment in which is, and also globally in response to the world as a whole. And all those activities that a company is either mandated to do, depending on a country, if they have a law or a regulation that mandates a company to have a CSR, or if they choose to do so, meaning voluntarily, they try to do it, and you might ask why? Because usually it's been shown that such activities has good effect on their bottom line and their reputation, and people are becoming more aware that we only have this one world and we should not destroy it too quickly. And hence, if they find a corporation is not acting well and is not acting in an environmental friendly fashion, or is destroying, or is not looking into the well-being of all stakeholders, they might not have a positive view of a company. And guess what? A company without a customer is a company non-existent. Hopefully that was quickly a good definition of, at least to get us going.
Thank you, sir. I directly want to go to Mr. Eric, because how do I find you? You are very much analytics, you are very much disciplines. So how actually you want to analyze about this corporate social responsibility in these pandemic situations, and how you want to define the cultural difference, and how we can work together as a global community in present situation.
Yeah, well, the definition of success has changed quite a bit about once a decade, Steve. And in the 90s, before the 90s, the definition of success was how much money are we making and how much money are we making right now. And it became an awareness that it's not just about money. In fact, the companies that were doing well looked at money, but they were also looking at things like operations and customer relationships and learning and growth. And so at that point, companies started to make that change from only short term to realizing you had to do the long term. And the key is, how do you measure that? So they had various things like the business scorecard came to keep track of what that was tracking. So you could actually do the analytics, like you said, what's successful. But then Industry 4.0 came along, the fact that technologies such as big data and Internet of Things and cloud computing caused the change to be so fast and accelerating at such a pace that companies began to realize that that future growth, that earning and tracking, those things you have to measure, became this idea of resilience. How do you handle large changes, not just in the planet, which is where things like sustainability came, the environment and pollution, things like that, but in business as a whole. And then when the COVID-19 pandemic came, what we saw was how easy it was to get a real push that companies had to respond to. So at that point, people started worrying about resilience. So let's just take one of the cases you talked about is culture. Right now, one of the critical issues is, how do you create a sustainable, resilient workforce? What's happening now to the workforce, and what's going to happen as COVID-19 transitions, and how do you track things like just workforce? So when it comes to analytics, it really comes to the fact of outcomes. And that's the challenge right now is for successful companies to successfully target what outcomes you want, because analytics don't mean anything unless they're related to outcomes. So that's the challenge right now is what are your outcomes in terms of production, in terms of your sustainable and resilient workforce, and business models. Business models are changing like crazy. So I hope that answers your question of the real challenge on analytics and how you come together. It's really about shared outcomes lead to right measurements.
Thank you, Mr. Stan Foster. My question is that how do you want to analyze this corporate social responsibility as well as in terms of North American cultures and Asia Pacific cultures? What your observation? How we can integrate together in terms of corporate relationship?
Well, I think, again, the pandemic has just expedited everything. Companies that may have only been dabbling before in utilizing some of the mainstream technologies like you're broadcasting on right now, but also in having international meetings and corporate meetings in more than one place, utilizing some of the new technologies. Many of these companies just weren't ready for it, and they were, or if they were going to go into it, they were going on in a very slow and measured model. And all of a sudden, this pandemic hit, and we've seen this in North America as well. In the United States, for instance, one of the major platforms is Zoom, ZOOM. It allows a lot of flexibility, and their stock corporately exploded after COVID-19. If you were fortunate enough to actually invest in that particular stock, it's because many it became almost synonymous with, like, Xerox the company Xerox used to be synonymous with making a copy, right, of something. Well, Zooming became synonymous with this platform of being able to hold meetings and events long distance. So I do think that is going to definitely is hit in the United States. I do think that likewise, I think many of the Southeast Asia companies have faced the same types of challenges, and I think they're coming in again, utilizing perhaps a different platform, but the ability that you now have to become very much technology literate. Again, my favorite quote, again, I'm older than most, and I know when I worked in the motion picture industry for a long time, and during the time when technology was coming in with Stephen Jobs and Apple. And I remember Stephen's wonderful quote, really, is that my generation, and now many generations that have come after me, that or before me, were called digital aliens. We just didn't get it. I mean, if we utilized email, that was a big hurdle. But now what we found is that and our younger generations were called digital natives. That's what Stephen Jobs referred to them. They grew up on technology platforms, and so I do think that the companies and Asia companies, and particularly because they're doing with the Generation X, Y, and Z, young adults are much more capable of handling this type of a pandemic, and also all of the technology that comes with it that's going to allow us to navigate it.
Thank you. Mr. Mu, you are president of Pacific Rim Business Council. I think you are representing China. And now China economy growing very fast, and in the COVID periods, they are doing excellent work. Even in Malaysia, I am observing that how they're making the diplomatic relationship with government, with corporations, and they are making very fast business right now. In Asia Pacific, China actually very much active. So I want to know that how actually Chinese corporations they actually handle their corporate social responsibilities, how it works culturally, how they deal these things.
Okay. First of all, I'm not the Chinese president of PRBC. There's a
Okay.
lovely lady named Lisa Lee. She's based in Shanghai, and she's our president. And as much as I wish to be her, but I'm really not her. And I'm flattered that you think I'm her. And she is just amazing. One day I hope she will have an opportunity to be on this show. But yes, I'm mainly in charge of PRBC's marketing side of stuff, and I am Chinese, so I can say something about your question. Fortunately, so if I just go straight up, say how Chinese think, and the 5,000-year history of Chinese culture, that will bore people to sleep, and obviously that's and honestly that's too alien an idea to communicate directly. Just ask. Dr. What's his name? Marcus. He's a British expat living in China, and he wrote a book called "When China Rules." And he's trying to look at it from Chinese point of view, and he got a lot of bashes from the Western media. But I will stay within a Western framework and just see how China is behaving within the Western framework. And the framework I'm using is the CSR. That's our main topic today. I'll give you a brief history on CSR because Doc and Eric both mentioned something about the root of it. So it was developed first in the late 1970, very late 1970, 1979 to be precise, by Archie Carroll, and that predates Michael Porter's 5-force theory, and that also way predates the Edward Freeman's stakeholder theory. And at the time when the CSR first developed, the only theory that's kind of available is the agency theory, where there's a separation between the management and the corporate owners, so basically stockholders, in this whole deal. Because the only known player to a person who is studying management or who is studying corporations, the only players, the only stakeholders, we call them stakeholders nowadays, are the stockholders and the management. That's the only thing they care about. So when you look at the original, the so-called OG CRS, the corporate social responsibility, the bottom layer, the basic layer, the economic layer, that's what they call it, is to make money for the stockholders. And today we know more than that. We know stockholders are not the only one who matters. And hopefully we know that, but from how some of the corporation behaves today, they're not on board of that trend yet, because most of college or most of business school are still teaching the old framework. But today it's evolved into something. Even at Michael Porter's level, it evolved into something else, right? At the agency theory level, it's all about making money for the stockholders. And on the when Michael Porter comes in, he says that the 5-force theory, it's not about money. It's about competitive advantage. You can make a truckload of money today, but if your competitive advantage is gone, tomorrow you will be penniless because your money will all be made by either your suppliers or customers or somebody new who comes into the industry. That's basically what Michael Porter's theory is. And then Michael Porter came up just 1 year after the CRS theory. There's really no forced connections there. I'm just putting there out because we live in a Porter era. Today, we mostly look at so-called 5-force to analyze our system. But even Michael Porter's theory is kind of outdated by Eddie Freeman's stakeholder theory. So why do I have to talk about all this? This sounds boring. It's just history, ancient history, right? It's in the 80s. Michael Porter came out with this probably after smoking much of the medical or marijuana, and come up with everybody in the world needs to work together. Well, partnership, not really a competitive force. But his theory makes sense. So who should be benefiting from the corporate? Yes, we are making money, but who is the money made for? And why are we making money? So this all ties into China's success. A good example is Huawei has been making a lot of news nowadays, not because they want to, but because America is one-sidedly decided that they are the enemy of the state, and that's why we hear a lot of news about this. But when you will throw out Huawei, most people who listen to the Western media, they initially thought that's an evil company, right? That's the company that's backed by the Chinese government, and they are they are spies basically. If we use their network or their phone, all of our information will be stolen, and the Chinese officials will be just jerking off in their office looking at our private pictures or private information. But that's not really the case. Like, what kind of twisted world that would be a society, right? That would be a priority. That's just evilized propaganda. So if you really look into Huawei, and I have been in the US for 10 years, I have no reason to look into Huawei, but just because I keep hearing it, and as a academic, I'm just naturally curious about what is going on in that company. And luckily I know Chinese, so from somebody who knows Chinese, who can read, who can actually listen to what the other side has to say, what I gathered is Huawei is structured in such a way it doesn't really have any stockholders. I know that's shocking, right? That's like the biggest tech firm in the world doesn't have any stockholders. And that's how they operate. The reason they don't have any stock, the reason they're not really a public company, a traditional public company, is because their shares are too nobody has enough share to actually go public, because they actually, at the very beginning, they gave all the shares to their employees. And their employees, as a whole, is as big as some of our, the population is as big as some of lower population cities in the US. So in itself, it's a society, right? When you talk about social responsibility, what is social? If you say our entire organization is a little society, then your responsibility is for people. And by taking care of your employee, you are taking care of the entire society that you scope yourself within. And China seems to take this idea to its whole entire mind. Why is Chinese so productive? Because they are all treated as if they are an employee of the country. And why China is taking care of their citizens? Because that's the same reason why corporations take care of their citizens. Corporation takes care of their employees, right? And why do we have social insurance? Why do we have medical insurance? China's medical insurance is all state-backed, and a lot of other countries do that too. America is arguably the only developed countries that doesn't do that. So why is that the case? Because U.S. is still stuck in that, first came out it was 1930s, right? That was 70. No, that's 90 years ago, when the agency theory come out, and the actual practice actually predates that. It's still a wild world in corporate environment, because you only make money for your corporate overlords, not corporation as overlords, overlords as corporates, which is the stockholder, which is not really the stockholder, because their vote doesn't really count, let's be honest, because they hold too small share to matter. But the person who actually control the stock exchange, the SEC of the world, and the so-called traders and the investment firms, they control the big corporates, and they answer to those people. And those people are the so-called 1%. They are less than 1%. Maybe 1,000 people in the US are actually enjoying that. And all the money I make towards them. And whoever is closer to them, they get some money out of it. And that's why the society once a pandemic hits, doesn't need a pandemic. Anything else that's hitting the society, you will see a big wave because people are not really inherently matter in this society because they are not an employee of a bigger company, if that makes sense. Because US is not a company. It's many companies put together and they all only look after themselves. And people are not taken care of. So that's the difference between what China is doing good and what's the, for the letter of better term, the rest of the world. Because there's other countries that's treating their people like employees. North Korea is treating their people like employees, but it's a very strict company. That's a company where if you leave a company, they probably kill you. But that's still their mentality. Everybody is part of the society, so everybody needs to be taken care of. And in the US, yes, you have freedom, but you don't have the security. That's the difference. I'm not saying which one is better, but in a pandemic, obviously, the one with stricter, the one with the so-called security actually prevail. But in peaceful area, maybe you want more freedom. But you can't have both. That's like you can have a cake and eat it too. And it's inherently contradict with each other. Unless I'm just not smart enough to see a better solution out of this. But that's my take on it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mu, for your excellent analysis. I directly want to go to Dr. Ali because you are very experienced. You are world class professor as well as you are world class consultants, and around the globes you are finishing many interesting projects and work. My question is that based on Mr. Mu analysis, the China cultures and US cultures, on the other hand, you have huge knowledge from the different country and different cultures. In these pandemic situations, actually, my point of view is that nobody is facing this kind of challenge before. Nobody actually handled this kind of things before. Many every day, at least 5 different corporations, World Talent Economy Forums, we get call that when this pandemic will over, because you have very good collaborations with different intellectual community. I think you are the right person to answer these things. And what will happen, because many corporations are in troubles? What your analysis? What your prediction?
Right. I guess I have to answer the $1 million question.
Yes.
But let me just make sure that we have first of all, thank you all. I mean, especially Mu. I mean, you really brought this to a very good platform upon which we can discuss. I mean, and I do agree with you, Carol's definition that, the social responsibility of the business should encompass the economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary expectations that society really expects at any point of time, especially this time. And this definition, as you said, has the economic, legal, ethical, as well as discretionary or philanthropic activities in mind. Now, why that is important, what you just mentioned, I think, is the difference between companies who make it and companies who don't make it. We'll come back to this discussion again. Now, when would this be over? To be honest, if you go back 100 years ago and you see what the Spanish flu, which had a lower R than this particular pandemic, had, it killed around 50-some million people. And these are very conservative estimates. Now, up to now, the number of deaths is around million some. And let's say people don't report, let's say Trump is right, and that million some is 4 or 5 million. But that's it. That's the extent of what has happened, considering how airborne disease, what is the high R factor. So most likely we'll come to some sort of a solution by first quarter of 2021. So we will see some sort of a solution. Now, because it has become political here in USA and even elsewhere, most likely they'll push this. We don't know what kind of side effect a potential vaccine would have, but we will see that this particular pandemic will die off starting the mid or end of second quarter of 2021, and by 2022, the remnants of the pandemic will be present. However, the effect of this pandemic is much more potent, and it will be long lasting. As a matter of fact, I just came back from a tour of Middle East, and I was asked by many owners and major players, especially in Dubai, that look, what's happening? And I think we all agreed that most likely half of the businesses will go under. Half of the businesses, especially the mom and pop shops, the ones who were really called the trickle down effect, because you see, there is a when you get such a large spike in the economy within the past, let's say 150, 180 years, and let me just show you this. I think my assumption is you guys can see this particular graph that I'm showing. Am I correct?
No,
Yes.
now we can. Yeah.
All right. So we can see here, I mean, for as far as we've been able to measure GDP per capita, we see things have stayed the same until around 1717, 1716, and then started moving. And we see from 1780, suddenly we get this spike. And this is like normalized per capita. Imagine what has happened to to the population worldwide. And then you can see how drastic of a change we're talking about. This change that has happened in the past 100 some years, now, as what Eric was saying, is definitely dependent on industry revolution 1, 2, 3, and definitely 4. But what's happening here? Such a growth is not sustainable. We cannot do that. Something has to give. As this growth was taking place, there are certain trickle-down effects on the so-called other players in the world, right? So these are the mom and pop shops. These are companies who were created just because they had the right relationship with the right government. So this, keep this in mind, please. Why this is important? Because you see, you cannot just be running a company without knowing what's up, without knowing how did we come to where we have come to. For you to better understand this and see that effect, let's say by second quarter of 2021, the issue of pandemic is sort of managed. Now, worldwide, it might take until end of 2022, but in the industrial world, we're talking about end of second quarter, we're talking about curving and turning the corner. I don't think President Trump says we're going to turn the corner soon. I think soon he means in about 8 months' time. But when that happens, what's going to happen when you look back, you see how many companies has gone out of business. Actually, the number of people that will be killed by this pandemic will not be as significant as the number of lives that will be destroyed in a long term. That's issue 1. Issue 2, there are many, many major side effects of this pandemic that we have to live with as humanity in a global fashion, such as home shoring, such as letting go of many activities that would have taken a decade for us to make it virtual, as Dr. Foster was saying. So what we're looking at is a reality that businesses will not be able to continue. Why am I mentioning this? For those of you who are watching this, each time you see a threat, you definitely should turn this coin around and see the opportunity. If you are active in this space, if you are interested to redefine your role and position in a new world, this post-COVID-19 is unlike anything you've ever seen. Post-COVID-19 says there is no more that trickle-down effect of such a large movement, because that is gone. As a matter of fact, just take a look at the number of companies who have gone bankrupt within just this year. Just go and say companies who have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and you'll be amazed how many major players are gone for good. Now, imagine what's happening at the mom and pop shop. Imagine what's happening at the corner store, at the corner restaurant. Look what happens to all these people who spend so much of their money, they have borrowed, and they have bought a store in this international airport or that international airport. They're finished. And it's not going to stop right there, because there is this wave effect that is like a domino effect that is going to create a fair amount of difficulty, which brings us to what Mu was saying. I think the world needs to rethink, and it's going to do that, into issues more of a socialist nature, not communist. Please do not mix these two. Communism was something that is dead. I think Stalin did a good job to destroy communism. However, a socialist movement which is based on resilience slash CSR is the future. Even in US of A, the most anti-left country, we're talking about UBI, Universal Basic Income. Why? Because we are fairly sure that by 2030, 30% of people will never ever have a job again. So what are we going to do to them? These are consumers. If consumers don't have anything to eat, guess what? We just saw the largest black group here in USA arming themselves to thief. Just go and watch the news. And guess what? These are the real good boys. These are our veterans. These are people who went and put their life on the line going out there. You'd be amazed, in a pure capitalistic society, people who go fight for the country, okay, they fight for the country, they come to homelessness. They come home and become homeless. There is no home. What Mo was saying is reality of capitalism as a whole, that we need to have a second look at this whole idea of ownership, this idea of who should do what. Why do we even own? Should 2,100 people own more than 4.6 billion people? Is this going to be sustainable? Is this even fair? Are we going to be able to continue? How much or how far can we push the masses without forcing them into an uprising? Don't forget, US of A, the most modern country in the world, is the end result of uprising, one after another. It's been ingrained. I mean, our Second Amendment is exactly to guarantee that no one can force us into submission. What do you think people are going to do? How far can they put up with this? You think that's not going to happen in Iran? It's not going to happen in any other country? The question of sustaining the economy, sustaining the environment, legally binding activities, we need a new way of thinking. For those of you who are interested in this very new and modern topic of CSR and resilience, you need to be able to wash your eyes and look again. You need to be able to re-examine. There is no possible way for you to be able to be an active player if you don't know how did China become China. If you don't know the Belt and Road Initiative, you don't know China. If you don't know what has happened since 1992, you don't know China. And if you don't go back to 1780 and see what is USA about, you don't know USA. And if you don't go back to the first, second, third, and fourth industrial revolution, you don't know what's happening globally. So in reality, I know that question was simply when is it going to come to an end? To be honest, never. Depends on what kind of effect. Is it going to kill people? Not really. Is it going to destroy people? Definitely. It's going to destroy nations. It's going to destroy companies and organizations. The effect of this, because to begin with, that increase was not sustainable. That growth was not sustainable. No nation. I mean, we, as USA, we're 4% population-wise, but we control the world. Maybe such imperialist existence is no longer possible. And we've seen that. And we saw just how China says we are not interested in either cold or hot wars. So what's happening is we as human beings need to redefine our existence in terms of each other and in terms of the world. That is the question we're here to visit. And that's why you need to go and study and understand how How did we become who we became? How did we accept it by our own free will to give away our freedom, to be enslaved by the new capitalistic organizations? Even we see in USA, we just recently called the top 4 players of the country and put them into question. What are you doing to us? Who says Amazon has the right to control all shops that are selling through Amazon? Who says? And look at the difference. As a matter of fact, this session I'm comparing Amazon with Alibaba. Even though they seem to be around the same idea, totally opposite ways of looking at the same issue of gearing business to business or business to consumers. I don't want to take more time than this. Hopefully, I've been able to not dodge that $1 billion question.
Thank you, Professor Ali. Uh, I want to ask actually Mr. Eric that yes, like how Dr. Ali actually analyzed the conditions and what will happen in the futures. So it's really possible. Maybe this COVID never end, and we have to survive in that positions. And in that situations, what will be our strategy? What will be our way of survive? What your opinion?
So there's two ways to look at business success outcomes. One is a very focused view in that we're going to do something specific. You could make the best software. You could solve a fresh water problem. But even as you get those problems and look bigger, it actually verges on what Lou was talking about, which is the stakeholder theory, the fact that there are many relationships coming together. So some of the power in this world, besides look at one thing and doing it really well, the other side of the coin is solving holistic problems where you can't do it yourself. Like even if you took that water I mentioned, fresh water, there's a lot of problems involved in just fresh water alone or making money. So, and there's a question on the board about developing countries. The key is you can do partners, and the global nature means you can find a partner out there. So if you look at a problem holistically, whether, for example, one of our partners in the TRBC, Innovative Sustainable Living, is looking at sustainable communities, not just the ability to afford a place to live, but to get a job, to have people you can talk with, a community, to have for homeless veterans that Dr. Guyabati talked about, to be able to have medical and physical and mental health. So part of the ability then is to add partnerships to make you more powerful. That also adds a bit to the resilience key. So if you look at this idea of, if you look at a problem together and say, well, Sharif is really good at that, Lou's really good at that, Stan's an expert at that, Dr. Guyabati is expert at that, put them together. That's the real issue here. That's the thing that has to change is how do you manage 5 people like this and go off and do something new without losing your identity, without having to start, a major company that has some of the same problems that Dr. Guyabati already talked about. How can you be yourself, work together in a sustainable and resilient way? And I know we've looked at that for a lot of years with a lot of practice. And how do you take multiple partnerships globally and put them together and get them to operate on a world economy in a sustainability and world supply chain? There's a lot of problems that you need to address. And what makes it good on one hand is that the technology to do that is coming along so fast. What makes it bad is those technologies causing such changes that you have to adjust. So that's really it, is how, for example, would you get 5 of us to decide we want to make a difference in the world, put our talents together, create a new entity while still being our entities, deal with all the issues globally, and deal with all the issues with technology and environment and things like that. So that's a real case. But the other way to think about that is, let's look at a case of a pizza restaurant that sold pizza slices by the slice. So they don't deliver because nobody wants a slice delivered. It's not worth it. So they have no delivery. They have a pizza oven. They know how to make pizza. Pandemic comes, nobody comes to the restaurant and orders slices. What do you do? So part B of that question is you look at what you have and you say, what is? And this is a case where diversity is very important, different views of thought. So if you say, well, what do we got? We got people. We got, we know how to bake things. We got a pizza oven. What that restaurant actually did was figured out that the pizza oven was great at molding plastic and people needed COVID masks out of plastic. So they turned their pizza oven into a COVID mask factory, and they had to retrain their staff. Well, to do that, you have to have a loyal staff, because if you're only hiring people that are coming and going all the time, it's very hard to get them to stick, to learn everything you know about making, packaging, marketing masks. So then the question comes, like you were talking about, Sharif, is what happens when the COVID is over? Are they still a plastic mask company? What are you going to do next? Well, the most valuable thing they have there is a staff who stuck with them through the slice years, through the mask years. The question is, whatever it is, what are you going to do next? And for example, when you go from pizza slices to masks, all of a sudden you need to talk about distributors, the manufacturing, so you need new partners. So that's the key, is building an infrastructure that allows you to have a sustainable and resilient workforce, but take on partners and go out and do business together. Add that another level of that is do that internationally.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stan Foster, I have a specific question for you beside this corporate social responsibility, because in the COVID periods, we actually face another things. We do not know actually how to handle the crisis. In this present situations, many corporations, what Dr. Ali said, maybe 50% corporate may die if it's continue. So how we can build up a better like crisis management team inside the corporations for handle this kind of pandemic situation?
Well, that's an interesting question. I really never thought about it in those terms, but obviously you have to have a different type of change in your thinking. Again, I just see the way that that the companies in the United States, I mean, there's the changes that are coming. There's a pushback against some of this technology changes that cause a problem in dealing with any changes that you face. For instance, one of the biggest challenges right now that we're seeing, Dr. Guyabati alluded to it when he was talking about Amazon. Amazon's such a huge company, and they're just this morning they announced a initiative that they get most of their data, derived from their customers' orders. Now they're going out and wanting to pay for data so that they want to see what you're buying elsewhere, so that they can change their paradigms to more effectively market back to you and get you to buy items that you're buying at your local grocery store or other places. So they're taking that, and that seems harmless enough. But when you put it into a different context, where what's really at the forefront right now is Facebook and Twitter. They have gone from this massive information gathering, and now they're politicizing it. They're very much taking and saying what people that want to post an opinion, if it's for this party, you can't post it, and they keep you from doing it. Actually, literally, one of the major newspapers in the United States wrote an article that wasn't agreed by to this huge to these two, Facebook and to Twitter, and they censored this newspaper. So again, it's what are you and the response to that. Now the United States is built on these freedom, very basic freedoms. One of them is freedom of the press, and so this is actually a conundrum. You have it is a social media company, because we're given a lot of different things to help them grow only 10 years ago. They were given constitutional shelters so that they were protected from lawsuits. And now they've taken that and almost flipped the coin on it. They've done the yin and the yang on it. And now they're utilizing that to weaponize. And what was supposedly a free press is now looking like very much not a free press. So you get the similar types. And the reason I mention this, I know this is these bigger companies, but even when you start, putting into divisions within a company, all of a sudden those divisions, if that division of the company has their finger on the pulse of what's going on, and if they don't have a good corporate culture that helps disseminate that what they're finding and disseminate that to the rest of the workers, maybe that one little sector becomes the new management. They do a coup and take over the management. Because they are the ones that are on the forefront of it. So again, there's so many different dynamics that are happening with social media and the immediacy of the media, and the ability to find niche markets where you can find people that are like-minded. And that's always been the double-edged sword of this technology. It's wonderful, allows you to find those like-minded spirits in a very effective way. But it also then puts you in a position that you could capitalize on it if you don't have good social responsibility. And so to me, that's at the heart of this whole challenge.
Mhm. Thank you, sir. Sir, I want to take some audience response because audience observing you. Humaira Tanzila, she said, hello, welcome to World Talent Economy Forum. Hope it can be an amazing discussions. Thank you all for joining these sessions. Hosne Ara Ferdowsi, she said, hello everyone, nice to meet you. And Onika Sham, she said, hello sir, I glad to see you all in one session. What changes need for CSR in developing countries? Noor Fazreen, greetings from Malaysia. Mohammed Sohail Rana, hello sir, I'm very thankful that you are going to discuss the CSR, which is very relevant for the current situations. Mohammed Shahinul Islam, hello sir, what the corporate social responsibility do social media companies have in relation to use of psychographic profiling in advertising? I think Mr. Mu, you are part of marketing teams, so you are handling this these marketing parts. So how do you want to give this answer? Yeah.
That's precisely what I just recently was looking into. Is the corporate social responsibility, like what's going on in the communication of corporate social responsibility, and on the flip side, so is there any corporate social responsibility philosophies that we can use in advertising, or we have to apply to advertising? I think I'm sorry if I'm pushing her name, Sahil. His question is about the latter. Is about what is ethical in advertising. Traditionally, we don't believe in any ethical in advertising, and there's, trust me, I have had a lot of so-called ethical class in a lot of business disciplines. I have been an accountant, so I know what the accountant standard of ethics is. I have been an educator, so I know what the teacher's ethic is, and I have been most of all a marketer, and I know marketer doesn't really have any ethics. And yes, there are ethical class, and they do teach you the ins and outs about it. But at the end, the teacher will tell you, don't do multi-level marketing. You're good. that's basically it. But let's just be serious for a moment here. So what needs to go inside? What we do, what we do not do in advertising, right? So before we address that, let's say, what is advertisement? What is marketing? Right? It's a matching game, and I'm sure Mr. Eric would agree with me. It's a matching game. It's if it's done right, it's gonna send the right product to the person who needs it. And that's all about that. That's all it's about. It's not about forcing something onto somebody. And that's when is the line crossed? It's when somebody doesn't really need anything, but you create a need, a craving to the person, and shove it to their face and take their money away. That's unethical. So if by that standards, it doesn't have to be on social media. It doesn't have to be psychographic in nature. What look at what Apple is doing. Do you really need a phone every year? Right? Do you really need to throw all that used batteries back into nature? Do you really need to throw all that plastic into the ocean every year? We don't really need that. So that's not really a marketing issue. Marketing is just a tool. How you use the tool is what matters. And who is using the tool and who is to blame, right? You cannot tell a gun to not shoot people and blame when somebody got killed, you blame the gun. Marketing is the guy in this case. You can't tell marketing to not be marketing, to not match people's need, or to not use people's psyche to sell them stuff, because that's the very nature of it. Unless you get rid of all marketing, you can't fix that problem. What you can fix, though, is what's worth marketing, right? And that's how CSR addresses this entire thing, because CSR is kind of taking the back seat on that. There's a different subtle difference between CSR and sustainability. So sustainability in this case actually takes the driver role here. So what is sustainable? And that means sustainable's basic definition is fulfill our needs in a way that it guarantees the needs of future generations. So like I mentioned, you don't really need a new phone every year. You don't need to throw plastic in the ocean, right? So what's actually consistent with that school of thought is actually what's worth marketing. It's actually what needs to go through marketing. And that's the good motivation to use a gun. If marketing is a gun, sustainable ideas, sustainable products would be the right reason to use that gun.
And this is, I think, when we come into the idea of, in addition, when you get corporate social responsibility and sustainability, you have a child called individual social responsibility. No longer, as human beings, we have the freedom to give away our freedom to, as Stan was saying, to big corporations, to technology. We have a God-given obligation to take our freedom seriously, protect it, educate ourselves, because without being educated, without being a good citizen of the world, there is no possible way for us to continue as a race. Individual social responsibility is at the core of everything you do. Educating yourself, educating your friends, those people who you have influence on, to make sure that what Mu was saying, and that's why right now we're tying 4 concepts together. We're taking sustainability as a whole, we're combining it to corporate social responsibility, bringing individual social responsibility to create a resilient organization, and resilience as a general aspect. Keep in mind, there are 4 pieces to this puzzle. And without individual social responsibility, there is no way. That's why no longer we can afford to choose not to choose, to give away our information, our privacy, our freedom to buy this or that, to choose this or that to somebody else. It is wrong when they say that Google knows you better than you or Facebook knows you better than you. It is wrong for us to have left our obligation to choose, to understand, to make sense of things to some higher being. And by the way, a higher being that is not necessarily ethical, doesn't have our best interest in mind. I don't care, as Stan was very astutely mentioning, I don't care if it's Amazon, Apple, Google, all of them. They are driven by capitalistic ideology, which is greed, maximizing profit. We may not, we should not, as human beings, give our freedom away. It is our obligation. You, I, and everyone else in this world need to deserve to be free. And to deserve to be free means You have to earn your freedom. I mean, as a matter of fact, we have a group right now, a group of futuristic studies that we've gone back 70 years, and we're reading The Sane Society that was written 70 years ago by Eric Fromm, to see what does it mean for our society to be sane. We are insanely walking zombies. We've chosen freely to give away our freedom to these major corporations that are high-tech. We don't make sense of it. We need to come back and be today's citizen. To be today's citizen, you need to understand how today's big corporations work. We need to understand how Facebook is shaping, how the false media is shaping, how the fake and the deep fake is shaping our perceptions. We need to have a perception. Individual social responsibility requires you to have your own set of values, your own vision, your personalized vision. You cannot choose to give away your freedom to a higher thing, especially if it's some sort of a corporate, multinational corporate, greed-driven entity that is only trying to maximize its profit. Our job is to take control of our lives. We need to be in control of our lives. Sorry, but jumping in there, Mo, but I thought we need to shove that ISR into CSR. Go ahead, sorry, Mo.
Okay. Mr. Mo, yes.
So about Doc had the idea of Google owning their information, but the reality is with the technology, it's the same idea, right? With the right technology, the information has to be collected, and somebody will be collecting. So who is collecting? I'm in agreement with Doc that Facebook is evil. So Facebook is not the ideal body to own your information, and because Facebook is driven by money, right? Whoever pays them, they put ads out. And Dr. Foster actually pointed out very sharply the one instance they didn't get driven by money. They got driven by the wrong ideas, right? They got driven by political ideas, which arguably is worse than being driven by money. But it's still the gun theory. The gun is not the one to blame. The one to blame is the person using the gun. And in this case, collecting people's information and doing something about it is by itself it's not evil. But it seems evil. But it's only evil because people have been doing that. And I did see another kind of marketing-related topic in the thread. Do you think tobacco companies care about social responsibility? So to answer that question, I have another question for you. Do you think coffee company or coffee industry care about social responsibility? Do you think sugar industry care about social responsibility? Tobacco is a vice because it's overblown since the 60s. People, saying smoking is bad for you, and nowadays, whenever you see somebody smoke, it's saying this guy is committing suicide. But in reality, scientifically, it's been proven. Smoking coffee, smoke and the caffeine, the nicotine and the caffeine is really on the same level. Drink a cup of coffee is probably at the same level of killing you as smoking a pack a day. I don't know, maybe it's less than a pack a day, but I'm not a smoker, so I'm not know the normal amount of smoke that's equivalent to a cup of coffee. And either way, they are both bad for your health, and at least tobacco companies are forced to let you know it's bad for you. And coffee industry, yeah, right. I'm drinking. This is not water. This is energy drink.
This is tea.
So our society is running on coffee, right? And another one is alcohol, right? So alcohol was before coffee. That's the drink of the day. And coffee, when it first came out, is actually a vice, and people they are outlawed in many countries, and for a good reason, because once people hop on coffee, they start raising coups and they just overthrow governments, and that literally happened. So my point is, again, what do we use it for, and do you disclose it? And by that comparison, tobacco companies are kind of responsible, but not because they want to be. If it's up to them, they will sell children's cigarettes, and they have done so. But today, at least, they are regulated. And that's another point of the CSR is how the society oversees a company, and that's what's the new definition of corporate governance that comes in. Right? Your society actually governs your corporations.
Thank you.
Eric, what
Well,
do
Thank
you write CSR for technology industry? See what to do.
yeah, well, first I'd like to mention what Lou was talking about is that do these companies care about CSR? Well, yeah, they do. But like Moo mentioned, remember the tobacco industry is based on stakeholders. So do customers of tobacco companies care? Do politicians and legal groups care? So there's this idea of shareholder primacy. In other words, is there a legal responsibility to first return money to the shareholders and everything else is secondary? In the U.S., that's mostly true. But that's changing in a lot of places, which gives the rise of things like benefit corporations. So do they care? Well, yeah, first they care because people more and more are saying, I'm going to spend my money on companies that care. So for that first reason, they care. But as things get more involved and they realize it can make better and even profitable themselves to look at CSR, that happens. You realize you have direct action, people that work inside, and you have external action, which is indirect. And you have this idea of taking action and withholding. So part of your power is withholding. So when you look at different strategies for CSR, there's now using the stakeholder theory that Moo talked about. There's a lot of different ways in terms of action, direct and indirect, and withholding, doing something and even refusing to do something has a big impact on what they do. And that's where individual social responsibility comes in, either strategically as a group or, I was just looking at an investment the other day, and right at the top was all sustainability, things you could invest in, sustainability investing. In other words, the people that are those shareholders. And so if all five of us believe that we like this share and we buy it as a sustainability share, then we become part of that shareholder part, which brings back the agency problem we talked about. So the idea there is, if you take what Dr. Guyabati said about individual social responsibility and you talk what Moo talked about, which is agency models and stakeholder models, what happens is we can actually impact tobacco companies, and it's already happening. In fact, in some companies, some of the biggest investors are the retirement plans, which will only invest in sustainable companies. So if you want people to invest in your tobacco company, you better be doing something for trying to make more health, or people won't invest with you and they'll give their money to someone else. The second question was about technology.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one thing about technology is communication. The fact that we can and will communicate, and Stan brought up a problem of what happens in social media communication, because a big argument is Google and Facebook and Twitter, are they news companies or not? And in the U.S., the law said, like Dr. Guyabati talked about, is it's not, they have a protection. So now sometimes you have people saying, well, when you say something that I don't like, when you let somebody say that, you shouldn't be protected. But when you say something I say, you should be protected. And so remember that most of Facebook is driven by, and Google is driven by ad revenue. So that's what they care about. And what they're worried about is being held accountable for something. So as long as they're not accountable, they've let people post. And now there's this big transition that says, should you be accountable for what somebody says or not? If somebody puts something that is clearly untrue, and you publish it, who's responsible for that? There's a big question that's coming with that. But the whole point is communication is probably one of the biggest technologies And that in turn, the ability to apply individual social responsibility through communication and spreading that truth. That's
Well,
having a big change. That's the biggest technology change right there, is how we communicate, how we find like-minded people, what we do with that. Do we all get together and withhold action? And the people that say cancel culture will say, we're not doing that because we don't like you. So that's a withholding action. They're external, so that's an indirect holding action. Well, I think communication is the biggest technology.
well, I wanted to just make a distinction here. I see the sugar and the caffeine argument is very similar to, on the technology side, to what I brought up about the politicalization of withholding information. In all of those cases, you know something and you know it's being withheld from you, and or that you know it could be bad for you, and then it's an individual choice. My challenge with technology is a little bit different. Okay, when it's also the lens at which almost everyone gets their information, and if I change an analytic in Google, I can change the entire lens, and you're never even going to see what you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't even get a chance to make up your own mind on it. You have not a clue. That is the deeper social responsibility that we're facing here. And this is a profound one, because again, I've seen some stories that companies were put out of business because there was a ideology change nobody knew about, but they could never get their information out because Google changed the analytics. So it's very dangerous situation there. And I do think it's a little bit apples and oranges.
And also, I see, I see some, so many different questions about so-called, how about this industry, how about that industry? Let me just share with you, I think you should be able to see right now, and I think you are seeing, hopefully, this book. Can you see this book?
Not yet.
Yeah.
It hasn't come on yet.
Okay. This is a book we just used for our sustainability and CSR class. This book is a very good book. It's very recent. It was written 2020, and it looks at latest perspective from corporate governance and responsible finance and CSR. This is a good book for you if you're interested to have a reference. It's the latest. There is nothing better than this out there, and you can see it looks at many different aspects of CSR. This is the book we use in our university because of our DBA program. As I said, we have very much hands-on activity, and as you can see, it goes all over the world. It looks at from what was asked here in different industries, be it hospitality or technology. You can see you will find a fair amount of new information from the Middle East to Far East to USA to Germany to Europe to Mexico, and you see it in different places. If you would like to, this is a good book that I suggest for you to buy and read. You will find it very entertaining, very informative, and it really addresses a lot of questions you might have. And you can see from innovation to sustainability, from gaming to coffee farming in Mexico. So you can see a lot of good topics have been, there are 20 different papers covered here. And it's, I think, if you are interested in this topic, anyway, being a professor, I have no choice but give you a reference. Issue 1. Issue 2. I think what all of us have agreed, and especially was brought to front by Dr. Foster, is responsibility starts with you. With you. I don't care who you are. I don't care what level of the society you belong to. If you're the owner, if you're an investor, if you're just a normal citizen, if you are an employee, responsibility rests with you. There is no possible way for you not to know and then expect everyone else to do it right by you. Go study history. Greed runs rampant throughout history. Yes, you can trust people, but you need to have the ability to keep them accountable. Yes, you have to trust the doctor, you have to trust the lawyer, you have to trust the company, your government, but you need to know what you're doing. You cannot escape from your freedom to choose to know. To be honest, what has happened to humanity, especially through this consumerism, and I do agree with Mu, the ethical aspect of marketing is finding the matching products and production to proper customer, but that's not going to happen. We know that. I mean, what Dr. Foster was saying. We know that when greed comes into doctors, lawyers, uh, medical uh, production companies, pharmaceutical, anyone who is driven by greed, driven by money, driven by profit taking and profit making, will misuse their position. Who's responsible? Are they responsible or are you? I choose to say you are responsible. You are
And
responsible.
I would just add power as well.
Yes.
If they're driven by
And
power.
this is, I mean, you see, I'm an immigrant to USA. Why did I come to USA? I came to USA because of what the forefathers of this modern nation has said, not because of what I see in the streets. That's why I'm a different American. And each time I'm interacting with other Americans, I call them to become an American. I recently had a talk with some of these high-level security apparatus of the country, and they were adamantly trying to tell me I'm not an American. And I told the boy, I said, listen, you don't know what being an American is all about. Being an American is adhering to certain values, is what the forefathers stood for. It is what the whole nation was about. Now, this experiment, yes, has been taken over by greed, has been taken over by corporations who are not even American anymore. We don't know what they are. But one thing we know, they're controlling our livelihood. They're getting richer at the cost of us getting poorer. That's why in our, at least, university, we're trying to give a better perspective of what this world is all about. It's about you being educated enough to make the right decision. No one, I don't care who you are, I don't care what part of the world you live in, you cannot elect to escape from your freedom by handing it to anyone else, to your father, to your boss, to your government official, to this company or that company. We need to be educated. That's why I'm in education. Education is the most valuable thing you can do for yourself and for the world as a whole. That's why we're here. We're trying to tell you, study, understand. Don't allow, I mean, you want to watch news? Fine. Let's say in this country, I watch Fox, I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch BBC, and I do watch Russian TV, and also Al Jazeera, just to make sure that I didn't miss anything, because I know they have targeted audience. When you read diversely. Don't be driven by one or the other. Keep in mind, it's your life, it's your future, it's your family's life, and it's your responsibility as a member of the human race to take your responsibility seriously. You do need to do that. That's not possible unless you belong to the 21st century. That is our solution. There is no other solution.
The core of individual responsibility is education, and the core of education is information. So these communication channels allow information to be spread widely, but it also is Stan that has the technology to steer it right back to what makes the most money or what people want to hear. So if you're only getting information source from one source, that's like saying if you ever end up in a trial, we don't need the defense attorney. We can let the prosecution just make the case, and we can all make our decision based on the prosecution. Or we could say, yeah, we don't need the defense attorneys. The prosecutor, we'll just listen to the defense attorneys, and we'll make our decisions in the court of law based on one source. We know that that's ridiculous, yet that's what's happening every day. Is people are putting on trial a tobacco company or plastics or, good and bad on both sides. They're just saying, well, I'm just going to listen to the defense attorney on this one. I'm just going to listen to the prosecutor, and I've got the whole story. And that just doesn't work. So the key to individual social responsibility is education. The key to education is information. The key is information is communication. So don't get your communication from just one source.
Right.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stone Fosters, how do you want to add this point? Because I think this corporate social responsibility issues right now is a really big issue. Thank you, Dr. Ali. When I discuss with you, you come up with this idea and points, and I think people has huge demand that how corporations actually playing this role. And beside that, I want to add one point. Is it only we just in present situation we only think about the corporate social responsibility and this point, or beside that we also think about the politicians' responsibility, because U.S. elections I think soon. On the other hand, even in World Talent Economy Forums, we find that in Nigeria, 79 young people died because of irresponsibility of these politicians. Even
Mhm.
World Talent Economy Forums, we are trying to add some young and talented pool from Africa, and they're really sorry about that. I think just last show about these African issues. Even everywhere, even in these pandemic situations, many politicians, many people, they do not play their role properly. What your advice? All of you are very responsible, very experienced. How actually governments, how actually corporations, and this total ecosystem uh, should behave properly and work properly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Was that aimed at me to start, or?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
The,
Well,
the elder.
well, again, I think the ability of we're all talking about really one major whole. So it starts with the individual. The individual is part of the corporate world as well. You have various duties, but you also have an individual duty, and then the corporations have the larger, responsibility into their society. I do think it all comes back in full circle. The ability now to utilize technology to be able to find like-minded ideas, to maybe further those ideas in a socially acceptable way is easier than ever, and it just takes some education to find out what different ways of how you go about gathering that information, and establishing your communications network. One of the things we're trying to do with the Pacific Rim Business Council is to have that network, and discussing these types of issues is really healthy, not only for the corporations in the various countries, but also for the individuals that make up those companies in those various nations. So, it is an individual responsibility, though, because when you see something that doesn't look right, and one of the biggest myths right now, I'm hearing how America is so systemically racist. This after coming off of, particularly with African American racism, and this coming off of having an African American president for 8 years, which was unprecedented. You have to use common sense here. Okay, there's some others agendas that are trying to be put forth that are contrary to what your common sense might tell you. Now, that's not saying that everything that's being said is bad, or it's not. There's never absolutes in anything. You have to utilize your common sense, and education is a great caveat here, because you need to be constantly learning new things. And I loved what Dr. Guyabadi said. I mean, get your information from a variety of sources that tend not to be all thinking out of the same mindset, or drinking out of the same trough, if it was water, right? So I do think that that's really an important aspect, and I would encourage everybody to do that. Do your own research, look for like-minded, try to be proactive, go by your own moral compass. And if you're involved with something that's not feeling right, then find another group, or speak out in your group and try to make that change. And if that change isn't possible, there are some other like-minded people out there. Just find them. And again, we're trying to create a very cohesive, like-minded set of ethical business people that can do businesses across borders. And that's what you're going to find with what we're doing with the PRBC.
And in reality, what World Talent Economy Forum and other entities such as WTEF is about is for us to understand that first is our responsibility, and it is what will make us a good citizen of this world. I personally happen to have a positive outlook. I believe we have not yet, as humanity, we have not yet learned how to live because of greed, because of all these constructs that are really outdated, outmoded, and it's really, we're still stuck in 200-300 years ago, even though we've modernized. However, if you are educated enough, if you are responsible enough, the tool set is here. Today, everything is available for free. For you to follow what my brother and my mentor, Dr. Foster, was saying, is to find yourself a right group. First, I think Eric said it last time in our meeting, is that first you need to start by agreeing to disagree. No one needs to be convinced. You don't need to convince anyone. As long as you agree that you're entitled to your point of view, as if someone else is entitled to their point of view. You come from different cultures, you come from different backgrounds. As long as we respect one another, and the word respect comes from respero, meaning going back and looking at something from somebody else's point of view. As long as Mu and Ali can get together, discuss issues without Ali expecting Mu to agree with Ali or Mu expecting Ali to be convinced by Mu, then we have found the right attitude. The technology is here. All we have to do is turn WTEF or like-minded groups such as this into a global movement upon which we can come together and discuss different aspects. Believe you me, you go and study the hero's journey and see how people became the leaders that they became. Go study history. Who says RTN, Azur, Rahman, or Hossein or Sohail or Muhammad cannot be that leader in the future? Who says there is a difference between you and Mahathir Mohamad? Who says Islam is not as good as some other leader, right? The leader within you, the hero within you, needs to be identified and developed. Who says Muin cannot be the leader who's going to change the world? The only one who says that is you. You have that potential within you, each one of you. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you are. You have the potential within you. If you find the right attitude, if you have the right value system, and if you become the citizen of today, not yesterday, if you do not escape from your freedom and you choose to do the right thing, you'll be amazed how many people were waiting for you to come. How many people were sitting there waiting for you as a leader to come. It's not gender dependent, it's not religion dependent, it's really how well do you understand your place and position in this world? And how well do you understand to interact with others so to make a difference? Unfortunately, we've come to a world that you sell yourself to make a living. So we work actually just to be able to make ends meet. So our life is about working. We don't work to live. We live to work, and that's wrong. You as a human being, and hopefully those of you who are much younger than us. Understand it's your responsibility, it's your opportunity. Everything you need to change this world is at your fingertips. Make sure you learn how to use them. Make sure you understand who you are. What we just discussed today is the latest. It is the most important aspect, which crosses borders, which crosses religion and organizations. However, for you to be able to do this properly, you need to go past the buzzword. So you use CSR, ISR, resilience. You need to understand what does it mean to you. I mean, to you specifically. How can you be an active agent? Keep in mind, Nelson Mandela was in a jail. Mahathir Muhammad was a nobody. People believe in their own responsibility and place. My hope, especially dealing with BBA students, is one of them will change the world. That's the way to go. We're too old, but you're young. As long as you educate yourself, as long as you understand the responsibility, but you do need to understand government. You need to understand international. You need to understand the role and significance of culture. You need to understand law. You need to understand the economic factors. You need to understand the environmental factors. You definitely need to understand and control technology. And then you need to understand teamwork. You need to understand leadership. Now, that's not easy, but if you understand these things and personalize it, so it's you, not buzzwords, not repeating things, not mimicking things, but making it yours, simplifying it, dumbifying it to a point that you can initiate. That's why I, anyways, would like this time to take this opportunity and really thank my dear friend, Dr. Sharif. I mean, he's done a great job, such a lovely man. I mean, reaching out from other side of the world to us and being an active agent. And by the way, the president, I think, of Malaysia from PRBC, joining hands, understanding dear people, Arif, Mohammed, Hossein Yar, or Mohammed, or uh, Shahrukh, Samun. You guys are our brothers, our sisters. Only together we can save this world because this world belongs to all of us the same. That's our ideology here at the university. That's our ideology when we move out to WTEF, to PRBC, to Innovative Sustainable Living, to Dubai Synergy Hub, to Expert Academy, to many other entities. Why? The only way to make it work is we need to be united. How do we become united? By having a common understanding of something from different perspective. Again, I would like to reiterate what Eric said yesterday in a meeting. Just to agree to disagree respectfully, to agree to like and love one another respectfully, to understand the only solution to this world is for us to have brotherly love, that is sisterly as well. That is the only solution for us to move forward. Yes, today there are a few hundred of us. Actually, in our case, now we've managed to go over 500,000, but we can become a billion. All you need is the right system, the right value system, the right intentionality, the right strategy. And again, being forthcoming when it comes to understanding and assimilating technology in our day-to-day activities. You'll be amazed how strong you are because you're not alone. All of us are you, but you need to be that leader we need. We need people like Mo, we need people like Eric, we need people like Sharif to lead us. We are here to serve. We are here to make sense of our own life. We don't do it for you. We do it for our own because we need to make sense of our lives. We are here to serve. I'm a Muslim. And as a Muslim, I come from a religion that its prophet says, Sayyid al-Qawm khadimahum. That's an Arabic. Saying a boss or the top man of any group is their servant. We believe in servitude. Both Stan and I are servants to our students, to our friends, And we like this idea of servitude because that makes our life meaningful. Go look for something that makes your life meaningful, not making money. Money is that necessary evil. Make it more about you feeling great. You, when you become part of this brotherly love, you break that egotism, the egotistical existence. Now, I don't mean to deliver a sermon, but in reality, the only way for us to be something, we need to become us. We need to be global us. Different colors, different races, different genders, different religions, but all feeling responsible for this world, for our life, for our value system, and for a better life for all of us. I don't think we have yet learned how to live as humans should. We're still in dark ages, except with high technology. Sorry for this sermon, Sharif, but I thought maybe considering
Excellent,
a
excellent.
professor, I need to profess.
Yes, yes. No, excellent, excellent, Dr. Ali. Excellent. Actually, this is the motivational aspect always. Even personally, me, even our audience, like when you joins, many audience actually joins only because of they want to learn something new, they want to know something new. And I think today our audience from different countries, and they also learn about the responsibility and how you define the responsibility from the corporations to individuals. This is the way of thinking, this is the way that like like philosophy, this is the way of the thinking that we should implement in our society. So I think our audience, they are really enjoy your sessions and all of your sessions. So I want to directly go for the concluding remarks. First I want to ask Mr. Eric, then Mr. Stoners, then Mr. Mo, and finally Dr. Ali. Yes.
Yeah, so the most important thing to remember is that people working together are all working together for different reasons. So it's important to understand the motivation of the shareholders, the managers, the government, the employees, and the consumers, and look to put all those things together. So, corporation may have even a profit motive first, but that doesn't mean there are other motivations in there. And in fact, you need to appeal to their motivation. For example, there's some research that implies that if you have a CSR program, you attract more dedicated, more productive employees. That's a reason that satisfies shareholders, but it also satisfies the workforce and employees because you get to work with people like yourself who are more motivated. So to me, when it comes to CSR, it's really about finding out everybody's motivations, even if they don't agree, but getting them to align. And somebody asked over there, is a strategic framework critical? Yes, it is, because CSR is not today, tomorrow, it's long term, which means you need a strategy to get all these different opinions working together to create a goal that has value for everyone. So that's my concluding remarks.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Stone Foster. Yes.
I'm not there. We also have a home stoner, but no, I would just like to conclude on a little bit more of what I said previously. I think that corporate social responsibility is very closely tied to corporate culture, and you're working with your company, taking your individual stance, start working with the company, and work with them. Perhaps now, in light of COVID, you need to re-examine some of the corporate culture issues, and those could be wrapped around the corporate social responsibility initiative. So again, all of that is part and partial. But because if you can't have a document without that's not living and breathing. And so by putting it into actually the corporate culture, then making it live and breathe, then you can make the corporate social responsibility efforts that you're doing come alive and can actually make a difference in your company.
Mhm. Thank you. Mr. Mo. What's the concluding remarks for today? Yeah.
So the corporate social responsibility are often treated as a chore or a requirement to do, especially in well, even in developed countries, it's still the case even today. There are very few companies out there are actually incorporating the philosophy of being socially responsible or being socially integrated into the society as a company. And let's not forget that the whole point of corporate is so that people can come together and do something that otherwise that's unachievable. And if we lose sight on that, we lose sight on what a corporation is. And there's a reason why it's called corporation, not making money operation, right? So it's not about money. It's about bringing people together and achieve something together that are otherwise unattainable.
Thank you, thank you. Before I go to Dr. Ali, actually, he is for me like a philosopher. Like when we discuss about anything, he's more as a philosopher. So actually, we want to learn more from Dr. Ali and all of the members, those who joined today. I know that all of you are very experienced, and you have your different point of views. And when you come to the World Talent Economy Forum, really, I'm really impressed when you joins many people from different countries. They just come and they joins, they ask questions, this point, that point, even though sometimes maybe all of the question is not relevant, but that is important that they are joining, they are listening to you. And World Talent Economy Forums, Asia Research and Development Institute, and Al Noor Academy, we are working together, and our major objective is that we want to create a knowledge based platform and knowledge based economy and knowledge based ecosystems in Asia Pacific. So how you contributing for World Talent Economy Forum? This will be very helpful. Even we love to contribute more, so that any kind of things we can do from our side, definitely we will do with PRBC. And now I directly want to go to Dr. Ali, and he is more than a professor. I think that maybe with his philosophical point of view, he will impress our sessions and finish our today's sessions. Yes, Dr. Ali.
I don't know. You always put me on a pedestal, and guess what? That's a difficult place to be. But in reality, we should never forget. We cannot be defined without the social construct. You cannot define I without saying where you come from, what society you belong to. Therefore, we are a social creature. Humanity cannot be defined without considering its social construct. Yes, according to Heidegger, now it's a philosophy, we've been thrown into something. We didn't choose our father, our mother, our race, our nationality, our religion. We were thrown into it. But after a while, where you realize you exist, and you don't exist in a vacuum, you exist within a construct of a religion, of a culture, of a race, of a genome that is you, you also need to realize there is a you. And that you, this social you, this social character of you, is responsible for you. Now, that is actually where this whole journey starts. What is the journey? We are given birth here. So I come to this world without knowing much, without being much, need help and support for at least the first 6-7 years of my life to not die from hunger. And even if we go into child labor, you need to be 6-7 years old. And then we start as an animal being able to live, but we cannot stay within our nature. It is our nature to go beyond our nature, to become a human being. So in reality, yes, you're given birth. So you are born to this world, but you need to give birth to your true self. That true self is not Asian, is not American, is not white, black, yellow, it's not male or female, it's you, the real you. Now, you need to realize this, that there is a real you within you that is your responsibility to give birth to. And that's the whole idea. If you cannot give birth to your true self before you leave this world, I don't care what religion or what you have belief. If you're a Buddhist, you have to come back again. and come back again. Even if you're a Hindu, you have to come back again until you get to nirvana, right? You have to give birth to your true self. And to give birth to your true self is to realize you are only an element of the whole. You're a whole only. You're part of this existence. Issue one. Don't forget this. Your obligation in life is not to make money. It's not to look good. It's to give birth to your true self. That's what dying before dying means. That's what Buddha said, right? If you die before you die, then you don't ever have to die. Because now you've grown beyond this physical existence into a realm, and that's what brotherly love is about. Now, another issue. When we get technical terms such as CSR, ISR, resilience, what do they mean? They are built on top of other concepts such as stakeholder analysis, such as organizational culture development, such as corporate governance, such as PESTEL framework, five forces model, Vario framework, SWOT analysis, balanced scorecard, a lot of standard strategies, which really looks at you and the world. And that you could be a corporation or it could be a single you. What you are looking at is you being able to locate you. You see, it's all about you. It's not about anything else. It's all about you being able to locate yourself. As I said, you've been thrown into this world without a choice, but you are forced to choose. And the best way to choose is identify who are you, what's important for you, what's your value system, independent of what religion you were born into. You didn't choose to become a Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, atheist. It depends on your environment. You are a historical being. And then as a historical being, you belong to your time, to your race, to your family, to your country, to your religion. So you need to identify yourself. How do I identify? I look outward. That's called environmental scan. I look at opportunities and I look at threats. That's all. That's all I can do. What are the opportunities? What are the threats? I need to be aware of them, cognizant of them, and understand that they're changing and make sure I understand them properly. Don't give it to someone else to tell you who you are. And then you need to look inward. Look at your strength and look at your weakness. Your strengths and your weaknesses are you. That's the only thing you can do something about. Because outside, if there's nothing you can do about. I just heard, sorry for this joke. They said, it was, I think, from Malaysia or somewhere. I think it was Indonesia, that COVID is like your wife. First, you think you can control it, then you learn to live with it. That's it. The reality is, there is nothing you can do about your environment. There's nothing you can do about your father, your mother, your race, your religion, your country, your abilities, your particularities. However, you are responsible to identify who you are. Go back to Greek, know thyself. Go back to Islam, right? If you don't know you, you don't know Allah. I don't care where you come from. You need to understand, who are you? Not what race, not what gender, not what family. Yes, we call you Moo because your father wanted to call you Moo. I might call you Tom. Because as long as between you and I, we agree that I call you Tom, you become Tom. Names are nothing. Even religion is nothing if it's not you. The only solution for each one of us is to become the authentic I. You cannot say everybody. You can only say I. The question is, how do you know? I always remember my daughter, she was like 4 years old. Anything I said to her, she would say, how do you know? And after a while, it sort of got to me. Ali, how do you know? That's why maybe I became a philosopher. That's why I had to read so much. Guys, ladies, you are responsible for you. You are the real you. First of all, there is no other you but you. You're the perfect you, but you could have a better perfect you. Work on that. Understand these concepts, but don't forget, the responsibility rests on you to be an active element of this global society. We are a global society. There are many people like you who can help you, which brings me to my final and most essential aspect of conclusion. Follow the feet. follow the free. If you want to see, it's like water. Water moves where it can. Otherwise, it doesn't move up the hill. It doesn't move up anything. Water finds its way by following where it is possible. If you follow the free, and that free means first free your mind, free your being, but follow it. You'll be amazed. Everything you need is available to you for free. People will work for you for free, as we are working for Sharif. Things will happen for you for free. But to understand free, first you need to be free. And to be free, don't be biased. Religious wise, political wise, nationality wise, be free. Open your mind from your gender, religion, race, whatever. Be free and look for free movements. And you'll be amazed how quickly we together can find a satisfying life. And by the way, we're not alive to have a great life. We're all alive to have a great death. We're all here to die. You're not here to stay. I don't know of anyone. So to have a good death, you better be ready to give birth to your true self, because your true self will never die. Again, I go back to Buddha, who said, if you die before you die, then you will never die. Guess what? That's another way of looking at ISR and CSR. Thank you all for the time you allotted us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And this is really, really nice discussion. I think our audience really, they impressed and they give you thanks, Mohammed, Sohel Rana, Hosne Arafedos, Araf Meras, Shumons. Many people actually give you thanks for your valuable time and discussions. And thank you, PRBC. Thank you.